You're standing directly in front of someone you've met, at least 3 times, maybe 4, and you suddenly realize with absolute horror that their name is just gone.
I mean, where did it go? It's not even hovering on a tip of your tongue. It is completely, cleanly absent, like it was never even filed in your brain in the first place. It drops you right into that helpless, panicky moment where a perfectly ordinary name completely fails to trigger a single concept, image, or feeling in your mind. And what follows is basically 12 seconds of pure improvised theater. You know exactly what I mean. You're subtly angling your body, desperately hoping someone else in the room says their name first, or honestly, silently praying your phone rings so you have an excuse to walk away. But listen, here is the validating truth. If you are a chronic name forgetter, you are not careless, you're not rude, and you are almost certainly not as unintelligent as you've silently led yourself to believe. Section 1. Cognitive chaos and working memory. Okay, let's dive into this. To really understand what's going wrong here, we have to look at the intense, behind-the-scenes workload your prefrontal cortex takes on during an introduction. When you meet someone, your working memory, that short-term holding space, is basically juggling like 6 heavy things at once. You are simultaneously reading their face, registering their tone of voice, figuring out the context, calculating where you stand socially, and furiously formulating what you're supposed to say next. And into that exact overwhelming moment of cognitive chaos, someone hands you a single rootless syllable. They say, "Hi, I'm Kevin." And Kevin doesn't mean anything. It just sits there, completely isolated, in a brain that is frankly way too busy to babysit it. Section 2. The Baker-Baker Paradox and Why Names Fade. The huge relief here is that psychologists have actually pinpointed exactly why names don't stick. They've legitimized your perceived flaw with some incredibly cool, hard science. It breaks down to a phenomenon known as the Baker-Baker Paradox. Now, what's really interesting here is a study from back in 1987, published by researchers McWeeny and Ellis. They took 2 groups of people and showed them a photo. They told the first group, the person in this photo is a baker by profession. Then they told the separate second group that the exact same person's surname was Baker. Days later, the group that learned the occupation remembered it far, far more easily than the people who learned it as a name. It's the exact same word, but with completely different retention. Why is that? Well, because the word baker as a profession activates this rich, dense web of associations in your brain. You think of flour, baking bread, early mornings, warmth. But baker as a surname? It's semantically empty. It activates absolutely nothing. It floats there completely rootless, and your brain simply doesn't hold on to it. You see, your brain is a highly efficient machine, and it preferentially holds on to things that actually mean something. Think about the last funeral you attended. You probably remember the smell of the flowers, right? Or the specific, heavy silence in the room, or maybe a poignant sentence someone shared that resonated deep in your chest. You prioritize that emotional texture and sensory input. What you absolutely do not remember is what was written on the printed order of service, because your brain made a split-second decision about what mattered, and it just wasn't the printed text. When it comes to human interaction, a person's name is just the forgotten order of service. Everything else about them, that is the funeral. Section 3. The next in line effect and anxious minds. Now, we need to shift gears to a slightly uncomfortable truth. A significant portion of chronic forgetters are actually highly anxious people who are completely trapped in their own internal monologues during introductions. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how that anxiety hijacks our memory. It's called the next in line effect. This was first documented way back in 1973 by psychologist Malcolm Brenner. He discovered that when people are waiting in a group to speak, anticipating their own turn dramatically reduces their memory of what the person directly before them just said. If you have hyperactive self-awareness, you're constantly editing yourself in real time. You're thinking, is my handshake too firm? Am I making enough eye contact? You are mentally a step ahead, meaning when the other person's name is finally offered, your internal monologue just bulldozes right over it. I want you to take a second to really absorb this reframe. You don't have a memory problem. You have a preoccupation problem. Wow, this is a massive paradigm shift. Your perceived failure isn't a cognitive deficit. It's just a heavily documented side effect of an anxious, preoccupied mind that is already living half a step in the future. Section 4. The Empathy Bridge and the Emotional Sting. But let's pivot for a moment, because we need to build a bridge to the other person in this dynamic. We have to acknowledge the genuine, pointed emotional sting felt by the person whose name was forgotten, because honestly, it would be completely unjust to pretend it doesn't hurt them. Having your name repeatedly forgotten lands like a small, sharp message. To the forgotten person, it feels literally like you didn't matter enough to stick. We have to validate that visceral reaction, even while knowing that rationally it's completely wrong. The tragic irony here is that the forgetter actually remembered their specific laugh, their odd takes on a movie, and the deeply personal stories they shared about their sister. They were highly engaged. They just missed the arbitrary label.
Section 5. Reframing memory and how recall works.
So the crucial point here is that we need to entirely correct the fundamental misunderstanding most people have about the mechanics of human recall. Listen, memory is not a recording device. Contrast a rigid physical filing cabinet, or a computer hard drive, with how human memory actually operates. Human memory stores impressions, emotions, patterns, and fragments. It ruthlessly prioritizes high emotion and surprise. It grabs onto things connected to what you already know, and it actively deprioritizes an arbitrary syllable handed to you at the exact moment you're under intense social pressure, just trying to seem normal. In fact, if you forget names easily, you are very likely a highly associative listener. I really want to reassure you, your mental architecture is not flawed. It is beautifully built for deep emotional attunement and rich storytelling. You're the exact kind of person who makes others feel genuinely understood because you remember the context and the feelings. You are simply poorly suited to the specific mechanical task of holding on to data under pressure.
Section 6. Manual overrides and real-world strategy.
Now, let's move forward and see how this builds, because even knowing all this, you still want to navigate introduction smoothly, right? We need to implement manual overrides to bridge the gap when your brain refuses to do it automatically. And these workarounds are simple but highly effective. Step 1, repeat the name back immediately out loud. Step 2, aggressively connect it to a strong visual or a person you already know. You are essentially doing manually what your brain didn't have the bandwidth to do automatically. You are constructing a little mental bridge between a new, isolated sound and a firm, secure place in your existing mental landscape. But most importantly, it is time to end the shame spiral. Let go of that quiet, low-grade belief that forgetting names makes you an uncaring or dismissive person. You are absolutely none of those things. You simply prioritize information differently. You occasionally fail at the single least interesting thing about a person, the arbitrary sound their parents assigned them before they had done a single thing actually worth remembering. The real stuff, the texture of who they are, you've been remembering that all along. Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought to take with you today. Are we valuing arbitrary labels over the actual, beautiful texture of a person's character? Don't let a forgotten name make you forget how deeply you actually connect with people. If this explainer sparked your curiosity and you want to dive deeper into the fascinating mechanics of human behavior, check out the description for a curated list of psychology books. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next one.